Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back, and welcome to the last session of this amazing conference. I am Kayleen Holt, and I am an instructional designer and founder of Scissortail Creative Services. I am here to facilitate this panel discussion. We've got Gwen, Devin, who were instrumental in putting this thing together, as well as Toddi, whom you heard in the last session. Molly is rejoining us. And I'm not sure if we're going to have anyone else join the panel or not, but we're here to talk about the importance of community. So we are going to start off by, I'm just going to ask everyone to kind of talk about what community means to you, and what is the value of your community for you. So I'm going to start with Gwen, and maybe Luis. There you go. Okay. now you're not just a tiny thumbnail.
There you go. So what does community mean to me? Really, it's just the gathering of people with likeness and similarities or common interests. It could be a gathering of people, whether it's geographic or like the community that Lewis has successfully built. It could just be anybody who finds common interest in things and has some commonality. And I think that's just, and connection. So not just the commonality, but the connection, I think, is really important when you think of community, and also service. So what do you give back to it? So how do you participate in it? How do you show up for it? That's what community means to me.
I love that. I love that emphasis on service. Excellent. Thank you, Gwen. What about you, Devin?
Yeah, I really like that comment on service a lot. For me, it's about support and kind of finding your space, finding your home, finding your people. And I think when we talk about work or personal, we could have different communities, we could have same communities tied together, but it's kind of about finding your place, where you're at.
Awesome. I love that. Finding your place. Toddi, what about you?
I would just have to echo that as well. Finding your place is definitely a big deal, because I always worked as kind of a lone wolf up to the point where I found TLDC, which was, back in, I think, late 2016. And up till then, except for going to conferences, basically going for the professional dev learns and things like that, I don't think I ever knew anybody else who did what I did. So, then once I met this group of I would consider practitioners, managers, kind of every role in the book, I was like, wow, there are many of us out there, and we actually have a lot of great things to talk about, and certainly have a lot of things to learn from each other, which is, to me, that's part of community, is what we can learn from each other, because I have learned techniques and tools and things that I never knew existed from this group. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. And just to kind of give a shout out to Luis and TLDC. This is such a fabulous community. I just found it about a year ago, and I love it so much. So can we get, just some more hearts and applause emojis for Luis?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
And I love that he does this conference. It's really empowering, and how earlier Megan talked about, giving others a seat at the table. And I think that Luis does that so well. All right. So Tanacha joined us, and we are talking about the value of community and what community means to you. So what do you have to add to that?
Definitely the support and what everyone else said. I would add definitely trust as well. Having a community that you trust the expertise, you trust yourself, you trust that you can be your authentic self. And then also that sense of sharing is very important for me. That's community. It's just one of those little, I don't know, not to say that it's an obligation, but it's just like a freeness of sharing and lifting each other and providing as much as we possibly can to support one another once again. So that's community for me.
I love that. And I love that. I mean, trust is a huge part of that. Molly, are you there? No, we don't have her video right now. All right, so we'll move on. And Molly, if you want to add to that later, feel free to jump in. And I want to add that for me, having these virtual spaces and like social media and things like that is just so important. I'm all for TLDC going back to doing some in-person stuff when the time comes. That's great, but please don't stop doing virtual because for me, it's the only way I can join. And, you know, some of you have heard me talk before about my disabilities. I have airborne food allergies, one of which is to caffeine. I cannot be around caffeine at all. So if you can imagine trying to go anywhere in public where you're not, you know, somebody's not drinking a Coke or coffee, Toddi takes a sip. It's really, really limiting. So I live a really isolated life. Even family members' houses are not safe for me. My kids make sure that it's safe but I have to give them a heads up. Hey, I'm coming, you know, clear out your, you know, there's a whole list of things that I can't be around. And so being able to join in these virtual spaces gives me that connection so that I don't feel so isolated. I feel supported and can learn from each other and all of that. Also, I love what Gwen said about service because, you know, when I started in this career, I was learning about L&D from blogs and other free sources of information. And so now when I'm later in my career, I want to give back so that other people have that same opportunity, you know? So my next question is going to be, what advice do you have for building a community? So who wants to start with that one?
I guess probably since I've probably got the longest amount of time in TLDC,
All right.
Sure.
Thanks, Toddi.
I've actually made a huge point to reach out to people within at least TLDC and other communities to let them know that I'm really enjoying their work, you know, just to make those connections. And so it's funny, I don't know if Sam Rogers is on here. I saw him post some things on LinkedIn, but going back to ATD, I think 2017 in Atlanta. I knew that he and I think Craig were meeting together somewhere. And so I actually went and sought them out just so I could meet them because I had watched them on TLDC and casts in the past. And it was so enjoyable just to hear what they're saying because both of them are like technical gurus. But just making that personal connection was amazing. And, you know, don't think for a second you have to do these things in person because I have some really strong connections that I have made since COVID on the virtual platform as well. And, you know, just and even responding to people who've reached out to me has been amazing. You know, there are a couple of folks that reached out to me on LinkedIn during COVID that, you know, I've gotten to know pretty well and learn what they do and learn from them. One of the young women is like just so incredibly smart when it comes to like, you know, gaming and really cool stuff like that I don't know anything about that, you know, I've really enjoyed getting to understand what she does. So don't be afraid to reach out, but to like tap the people in the communities because if they're here, they probably want to share. I mean, that's part of, you know, it's their personal stage and they're happy to share and they're happy to know that people are enjoying that you're getting getting something out of what they're presenting. So all good.
Absolutely. Thank you, Toddi. I gotta say, like I love when people reach out to me on LinkedIn or wherever, and you know want to ask questions or strike up a conversation. That is all great. What I will say is don't be too vague about it when you do that because if you start a conversation, you send me a LinkedIn message asking to pick my brain or ask about, oh, maybe we would have an opportunity to work together, then immediately I'm going to think you're trying to sell me something or, you know, like be specific about what you're asking because I'm all about helping other people, but I also I don't like sales pitches. And so avoid those if anything sounds like a sales pitch.
No, I think that's a really good point to be specific, just to say, we have this in common, would love to chat or something. I've even had people reach out and say, hey, would you consider mentoring me? And if I don't have time, I'll say, I certainly would love to talk to you and find out what you need. And if I'm not the right person, I'll help you find the right person, that kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. Sales stuff is not fun. And just no bueno.
And Tanacha mentioned bots. And sometimes you don't know. So
yeah.
That's why I want to know, like, what specifically do you want to talk about? Because otherwise I'm going to ignore that message.
Mm-hmm.
So who else has some advice for building a community?
I want to add as well is that we all experience it, but don't really say it out loud. But sometimes our expertise is very it's not narrow, right? We have expertise in a lot of different places, and then on the job we don't necessarily use all those skills, and you don't necessarily want to because you're just bogged down. But sometimes there's a passion for what you want to do that's outside of your job, and a community like this serves as that. And people asking you about some of those expertise, like, really lifts you up and gets your day going, because you don't feel like you're bogged down and trapped in this one thing that you're doing at your job. And also you feel there's value in the knowledge that you have. And I think building a community allows that, offers that, invites that, and those different skill sets, and for you to promote what you know. And anyone wants to know about this, I'm working on A, B, and C, or I have an interest in A, B, and C. And, we have a Slack, let's have a little Slack conversation about it, so I can share a little bit more. So you can start there.
That's great advice. Thank you. I want to, this whole day, I was saying to Luis earlier, this whole day has just been full of really powerful messages. So if you're listening to this and you didn't get to listen to the other or watch the other sessions, I encourage you to go back and watch those replays. It's been just a fabulous, really 2 days. And today there have been kind of some themes, one of which is community. Another is, lifting each other up. Molly said earlier, as women, we have to be positive and hold each other up. And then mentoring each other. So I want to ask Gwen, because she had kind of this idea that came to her in one of the early sessions about doing some peer mentoring circles. So Gwen, would you like to talk about that and provide some information about how to join that if folks are interested?
Sure. Thank you, Kayleen. It just kind of came to me when Megan started talking about the value of peer mentoring and how, there are different levels of mentoring and how valuable peer mentoring can actually be. I said, well, we're all women and we're all in the L&D space. And so maybe we could form our own circle. So I'll drop it in the chat, but you just need to send me a direct message via AirMeet with your email address, and I will add you to a listserv, and I will send out an email with more information. Or you can email me directly. I'll put my email address in the chat, but I'm looking forward to starting it. It looks like we've got over 12 people already interested, so I'm excited to see what we can come up with and how we can best help each other.
I love that. That's fabulous. And it looks like we got some excited responses to that. Lisa says, it reminds me of TikTok. Do you want to form an alliance? All right. So we've got Gwen's email address down there. I'm excited about that. Thank you for starting that, Gwen.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So and Devin, I'm going to start with you. So here's the question. How do you maintain a strong connection with your community?
It's a good question. So I'm actually painfully introverted. And if you've talked to me over the last 2 days, I start with that often. I think I just have to be conscious of keeping those connections. One of the things that I was going to say about building community is being open and kind of getting to know people past that level of where you connect. So this morning, Kara and I were on Twitter talking about basketball, and then she hopped on a table in the chat, and then we could continue that conversation about basketball. But I had only seen her through this speaking engagement. And, I got here to the TLDC through a micro learning challenge that Christine Belzy was in. And then I followed her on LinkedIn and then started finding all these different things. So I think, paying attention to what the community is doing in platforms like LinkedIn and platforms like Slack. It's so funny. Someone mentioned TikTok. I'm on instructional design TikTok, so I'm seeing what other people are doing, and that kind of keeps me in the loop. And it's like, hey, here's somebody else going through the same thing. I can reach out to them. So just being conscious of what other people are doing, and because I am not always confident I'm not always outgoing in that way to just be like, hey, I'm going to message you. Paying attention and then, kind of learning and then engaging when I'm comfortable, because it does take me a while, but when I do, I get to do cool stuff like this. So super thankful for that.
Yeah, nice. And I was a lurker for a long time on social media because again, I'm very introverted too, and also just didn't really know what I had to contribute. And I don't know if that's imposter syndrome or if it's just, that I needed to build up some confidence. And it actually took a friend and coworker telling me, you have really good things to say and to share, and like building up my confidence. She's wonderful. And then I started my blog and all of that. But so thank you, Toddi, for your kind words earlier. Appreciate that.
You really do have a fan club where I work, just so you know.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you. Okay, so I think we're going to have Molly join us again. Louise, is she able? There we go.
Yay, Molly.
Hi.
Welcome. Hello.
Oh my gosh. Technical difficulties.
That is okay. That's that, Murphy is around and expected. Okay. Well, Molly, do you have anything you want to add to our conversation about maintaining a strong connection with your community?
Just be transparent, be consistent, be compassionate, and be empathetic. Be motivating, and be loyal and trustworthy. So, yeah.
That's a great list. Honestly, I'm going to have to watch the replay so I can capture that list. That was amazing. All right. And Joanne says skill sets of careers that represent general in-depth experiences and specialists, which makes our community richer. So it is important to have a mix. All right. Anyone else have something they want to add about maintaining a strong connection?
I was just actually going to build on the comment from Joanne. I think it's interesting if we can bring in other people from like the HR fields and stuff, just because we all work with these folks on a regular basis, and we need to understand what their challenges are as well. I did do a project where I enabled a brand new LMS at one point, and so really understanding how HR uses that data was like a big deal for me. But we can broaden our horizons and get to know more.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I think, in my network, it has been really valuable for me to learn from other people who are in L&D, but not, necessarily doing what we do, the graphic artists, the web developers, the virtual producers. And because like you said, we're learning about their challenges, and I'm learning how I can design better for what they need. And also they're giving me, like the graphic artist I work with, gives me a lot of great advice on user experience and things like that.
Yeah, mine does too. She's awesome.
Yeah. And we've got some, Joanne says, be inclusive. There's a great one to add to that list from Molly. Awesome. Now, Gwen, you looked like you were going to say something. Were you?
I was. But I'm just going to add to the connecting with people and outside of our field, like human resources, which is really interesting because L&D is actually part of the SHRM block of knowledge, but we don't get enough billing, I guess, is what you want to say. So if you look at the SHRM lineup, very, very little of it is with the learning track. And so I think building those partnerships and also understanding that L&D doesn't necessarily report to HR in some companies. They may report to operations. And so what is that difference, as far as who you connect with, how many SMEs you work with, what, because when there's a disconnect, it's obvious, that there was no communication between the people who actually had stake in the decision and the stakeholder, buy-in as far as the final result. So that's just what I wanted to add to that.
Yeah, that's important. Thank you. And there's so many times a disconnect, I think, between L&D and HR. And sometimes they are in the same department. Lisa says she's reported to finance, HR, and ops in her career. I think that, yeah, lots of head nods, that it's like people don't know where to stick us.
Or even analysts. I mean, I've actually worked with analysts in the past. I'm like, okay. And sometimes we have to educate them about what we do, but more importantly, we have to understand what they need from us too. So,
Right, exactly.
Yeah, we have those higher and sub levels of need for learning, and learning professionals. So L&D just overall for the organization, training and personnel management and onboarding, versus a department in the organization needing to develop some type of curriculum or something internally, or for a client, external client. So we're like all over the board.
Yeah, Jennifer said she reports to marketing and comms. Susan says I'm embedded in the PMO. We're all over the place.
So one of the things, if I can chime in here, please. One of the things that I've noticed working project to project in the financial field and the healthcare field is HR doesn't talk to the department leader heads, and the leader heads don't talk to the workers. And so the leaders go to these meetings and make decisions, not knowing what goes into it. And then they come back to the workers, instructional designers, us people, and they're like, okay, we need to get this done. And they don't know what the scope is. They don't know what the timeline is. They don't know what goes into it and what's to be accountable for. And then you have HR, like they need to, everybody, and HR, the department heads, the leaders, and IT needs to be involved. IT is another scope of the department that needs to be included, because if they're going to be configuring the laptops and tablets, whatever devices that learning is on, and they upload a new configuration, it may mess up what's on the back end of the LMS. So all these people kind of need to talk to each other, and they're not.
So what can we do to facilitate those conversations and to break down those silos? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Subtly make awareness to them, however we can. I know some leaders, and some leaders have the mentality that, well, I'm above you, and they use their title, and that ego gets in the way of what's really right. For me, a leader should know what goes into it, and they should be able to let the people below them raise them up, because they're the ones that are doing the work. So maybe subtly kind of have quick tip meetings, or even a feedback chat forum community online, things like that, to kind of start bringing awareness. That's going to also influence the culture of the company. I know Boeing has just changed their whole mindset, and they've actually included it on the mandatory part of it. When you do the onboarding, it's called seek, speak, and listen. And don't be afraid to do that. And it wraps all around the psychological safety and the emotional intelligence of, don't be afraid to tell me something if you think it's wrong or we're not going to meet our deadline. And so it's a powerful thing if it's used right, but it's also a scary thing because people are worried about their jobs. And you just got to make that connection and make them feel like you need to empower them and make them feel included. So
yeah,
it's a hard step, but I mean, if we don't do it, who's going to do it?
Yeah, I want to add to that I have, even before I was at the leadership position, I'm one of those folks that like to know, like, overall what's going on everywhere so that I can figure out my place in the whole scheme of things. And I would tell, not being a leader, I'll go to the leadership part first. If I'm just on as an instructional designer, I would always ask my leaders, what touch points do you have cross-functionally? You know what I mean? And if you could brief me on it, most of the time I'm the lead, at least the lead instructional designer, then you and I can talk before you go to those meetings so that we can kind of like really collaborate on what they need to know, or allow me to be at the table. One step further, as the manager or as the lead for a track or work stream in training or in learning, I do the same thing. I need to know what table I need to be sitting at, because learning based on what you're telling me about this project kind of weaves into this, and that, especially when it comes to data, to either learning environments or LMS, which are two different things. And I tell them that I need to be part of those conversations when we're talking about changes, when we're talking about staging data and information. I need to be at these tables when you have conversations. So let me know when our, tech folks are having conversations. I want to be at the table, if only to be on mute and listen in and advise.
And
That is awesome. Yeah.
And that is a good point. And it's also, to make it clear that you're not wanting to be involved in those conversations because you're a control freak. You're wanting to know so that you can make the whole department, the whole company better. And that's another thing that we have to deal with, is people think that, oh, you're controlling, or you just want to be involved just because. No, you want to make it better. And you want everybody to start feeling like they're included, because if you don't, people are going to start leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah, out of frustration, and it feels like chaos and no one's aligned. And then it really, a lot of times, you all know, it comes down to us. Like, you didn't create this thing that worked or you didn't, properly process it. And because if you had more information, you would have done a better job. So.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes me think of,
Go ahead.
sorry. I was going to say, it makes me think a little bit about one of the speakers that we had last year for Women of L&D, and we don't have the recording, but she talked a lot about building trust between the organizations, and it was really, her talk was the art of caring leadership, but it was about building that organizational trust so people could work together, and and strengthen the organization overall. So
That's so important.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and I keep hearing the mantra about building trust. It seems to be almost like the theme for me for the month, but I think it's really true.
Yeah. And I love, Toddi, I love what you said about you work for an amazing VP who wholly believes in understanding a day in the life of the folks you interact with. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Oh my gosh, he's such a great guy. I've had a couple of folks that I've worked for over the years that I just thought were fabulous, and this man is one of those. And he's been around for a long time. He's MIT master's degree a couple different times over. But why he is so good at what he does, and he is in business development for the organization, is he works very hard to understand what the customer needs, and to really hear and listen and understand what their daily challenges are. And like, he's that one person that will advocate for a day in the life of the customer, but he also advocates for us understanding the day of the life in the life of the people that we work with, so that we can, I mean, like, I've actually presented to him in the past about what my workflow looks like, and it depends on which hat I'm wearing. One day I'm a manager for all of the classes that roll out. The other day I'm doing instructional design. So I've actually, shared with him what the instructional design process takes, because you and I both know, I mean, it's the ID work, and then it's all the testing work, and then it's all the work with the LMS teams to test everything. And so there's like all these little piece parts that go into it. But he's keenly interested in understanding what goes into this, and I think that's what made him really good at what he does, is he gets that input. And it's good for me to see how he does this. And I way back, I used to say that I used to take a user perspective with almost every piece of work I did, including when I was doing robotics training for the soldiers, because I wanted to understand, like, how were they using these things? Were they shoving the controller in their pocket? Were they like tossing it somewhere? Did it work with them as far as their hand controllers? But, and we did a lot of user testing that way. But again, it's that whole day in the life. How are they using it? Where are they storing something? How long does it need to be powered up? How quickly does it need to be readily available for them? That kind of thing. And so I think it applies to all of us across the board. And if we understand what our counterparts do in operations, or what they do on supply chain or the manufacturing line, or if we understand those things, I think we can do better work for them, especially being a service in most cases to them. That's what we do in learning and development. I love what I do, so sorry I'm geeking out on you guys.
It is obvious you love what you do, and I think that's fantastic. Yeah, and I love that you have such a supportive leader that gets it.
He's phenomenal. I just,
if only we all had that, right?
Every day I keep thinking, I hope he doesn't retire. I hope he doesn't retire.
Tanacha says geeks are us. Yes. It's kind of a field of geeks, right? Molly, yeah, a great leader listens and allows his team to make, or her team, to make suggestions to grow and succeed. Yes,
absolutely.
Definitely. And I love, and I can't remember which one of you said this earlier, but something about the leader allowing people to build them up. Is that, I probably didn't get that exactly right, but yeah, that's really.
I think that was Molly.
Oh. All right. So my next question, and I think I'm going to go to Gwen because we haven't heard from you in a little while, is how has community helped you grow? And has it been limiting at any time? I think you might have actually written that question.
I'm not sure. Actually, I don't remember things sometimes from the day of what I did this morning. I will say the community has helped me grow because I'm a little bit of an introvert as well. And it's forced me a little bit outside my comfort zone into building connections with people I normally wouldn't build a connection with. And, I live in Hawaii, which can be very isolating in among itself. And it's very relationship built, but it's relationship built from like a gazillion and a half years ago. And if you're new to that space, then building that relationship is way more harder, I think, than it really should be. But it's community has helped me in the sense that it has given me a leg up, or it has given me exposure in places that I normally wouldn't get exposure for. It's taught me a lot. It's also that feeling of belonging, that I volunteer for the Red Cross, which is huge on community building. And, they always talk about what motivates people to volunteer and to serve for nothing, what motivates people to give back to their community. And really there's McClellan's theory of motivation, which is you're either motivated by achievement, you're motivated by affiliation, or you're motivated by wanting to influence other people. And I think for me, community builds all of those things, and it provides that whatever that need is that people have, it provides that motivation to kind of, be a part of something bigger than themselves. So that's actually what I've gotten out of being part of the community. I think that despite how much you put into it, you can always get so much back, much more back from it. You're on mute, Kayleen.
Thank you. I'm going to ask folks to put in the chat what motivates you. And Gwen, would you run down those 3 things again?
Sure. It's called McClellan's theory of motivation, and you're either motivated by achievement, which is, where you want to achieve certain skills. You're motivated by affiliation, which is pride in the affiliated, the community that you belong to or the organization that you belong to. You're really a people person who loves to connect with other people, or you are influenced, or you're motivated by influence, which is your desire to be part of something bigger than yourself and to influence other people and to give back as much as you can. So I remember that all the time, just because I think I use it in management classes and things like that. I think it's a really simple way of looking at motivation, but I think it's pretty clear.
I really like that. I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah, that is cool.
I hadn't heard of it before. I think for me, it's influence. It's not that I want to influence people, but you said be a part of something bigger than yourself. And that really resonates for me. And I'm seeing a lot of head nods here.
And in the chat too, actually.
Yes.
Looks like
influence, affiliation.
Yeah.
Helping others. Yes, we are definitely a career field of helpers for sure.
And we want to know how what we do matches the mission of the organization. So I think that that's actually the one question that L&D asks a lot is, how does this project, how does my role, how does this particular initiative, how does that meet the mission of the organization? And I always ask people, when I meet them and they say they work for a certain organization, I will ask them, especially if they're a client of mine, do your people know what your core values are? Can they recite them? Can they recite what the mission is? And, I'm going to pick on my husband for a little bit, because I asked him that when he first joined the organization he works for now. And he goes, "Oh, they're posted on the wall somewhere." I said, "Yeah, I know, but do you know what they are?" And I think L&D does a really good job of saying, okay, not just, okay, this is the project we need to do, but how does this fulfill what we need to do in order to move the organization forward? And so I think that that's a unique part of what we do, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
I
And
love
that core value comes from the top too. I was just thinking the same VP I mentioned earlier literally talks about our mantra being to protect those who protect us, and so like we all know that we can refer back to it because he means it when he says it, and he says it a lot. So
That's great. Molly, do you want to talk about that? You posted in the chat, what legacy do I want to leave behind?
Just every day that you do something, and every time that you witness someone being a mentor or you being a mentee, or vice versa, just always think that they go home to their families and they talk about you, and you're a conversation at the dinner table if you treat them badly. You're a conversation at the table if you treat them with compassion and you empower them. And that also influences the family that they're hearing these things, the negativity. And I stress on this because I've had a lot of negativity in my past life, and it's just very stressful on you and your well-being. And so many times, and I can hear my mentor, Mr. Admiral Jim Lair, tell me, Miss Molly needs to take care of Miss Molly, because if you aren't at your prime and you are not well enough to take care of yourself, then you're not well enough to take care of anybody else. And that's so true. And I've learned that the hard way. So yeah, I just remember that, when you're in your group, when you're in your community, just think, how am I going to handle this situation? I want to be treated. How would I want to be treated? And that's how you treat them, because they're going to go home and they're going to talk about you. And do you want them to talk about you in a good way or a bad way? So
absolutely, yeah. And Tanacha put in the chat, so true. My family knows the person that makes my job hard. My first and last name. Seriously, we're not going to ask you for that name, but we all know. We all have that person as well.
I want to add that it's so true. You know that you have a problem when you find yourself either complaining or mentioning this person or what they did on a daily basis or frequently. And I'm not lying. 5 years later, after either I left a project or initiative, wherever I was working with this one person, my best friend still mentioned that person's name when we talk about something. Yep. Don't be a blah, blah, blah.
So my husband, my kids, they have those names they bring up.
Yeah, it was time for me to go after all. I'm like, if everyone knows that person by name like that, I should have left a long time ago.
Yeah, it goes back to self-care that we were talking about yesterday, that you have to prioritize yourself and your emotional wellness. Yeah. Devin, I want to come back to you. How has community helped you grow? And has there ever been a time where it's been limiting for you?
So this actually touches on what we just talked about that person whose name that is constantly coming up in a negative light. I would say that in a previous role, I was in a community, because it was my work community, it was my academic community, that was really limited. It was really limiting because it was in a very negative space. We had a lot of poor communication. That comment about leadership and we should be able to prop up. The problem was we were told to manage up, and it did not go well. And we as a department had started to shift in value, and it had really, really negatively affected me. And because of the institution I was at, it was kind of a known thing on campus. It's like, oh, that department's miserable. That department isn't working well together. That department's a mess. And that's my community. I'm affiliated with it. But as it shifted, I didn't want to be. And actually, that's why I'm where I'm at now. It had so negatively affected me. I was coming home constantly complaining to my husband. My daughter is getting all this negative energy, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So I switched careers. I got into instructional design. I'm with a great company that really does have a really welcoming culture, a really empowering culture, and started doing things like this. And this is the community where I've learned to grow. And this is how I know I'm in the right place, because my mentality is completely different. I don't, everyone has things at work that frustrate them, right? But I'm not coming home and complaining to my husband and saying, oh my gosh, this is terrible. He might not know the person or the thing that made me upset today. And I think that when you're in the right space, when you're in the right community, that uplifting is what makes it so important. And that's how you grow. Because I've also now been in the position where I can say, I forgive that person. I forgive that situation that I was in and how negative it was, because now I'm in a place where I don't feel like that anymore. So it's helped me grow, one, because I feel supported, but two, because I feel like I can move on from that. And, my dinner table conversation is a little bit lighter now.
I love that so much. And you saw there were so many hearts and applauses. Yes, being in a supportive culture and community is just so important. And if you're not there, then do some soul searching. You might need to get there.
That's where those mentors can help. They can help you figure out what's next.
Exactly. Yes. Molly says sometimes it gets so emotionally, physically, and mentally stressful that your hair roots hurt.
I can tell you my blood pressure went down after I switched jobs. So.
Yep.
For real.
Yeah. And Joanne said something about the person that shall not be named, going back to
Voldemort.
what Molly and Tanacha were talking about. Yeah. All right. Well, we are right at about 15 till. So this has been an excellent conversation. I think we probably need to wrap it up. If anyone has any closing words you want to share. Okay. No, I really thoroughly enjoyed speaking with all of you and having this conversation. And I'll be going back to the replay to listen again, because it's just such an important conversation. And thank you, Louise. And I assume you're coming back to wrap us up. Thank you so much, Louise, for putting this together, giving us this opportunity to learn from each other. You are the bomb.
I agree.
Thanks, Kayleen. You did an incredible job, both panels, for facilitating both. So
thank you.
I need to mention that, because you did a wonderful, wonderful job doing that. And the rest of the program team, all of our guests, thank you so much for helping build this and providing the energy to make this happen. And that, I hope you guys have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.